Welcome again to educator.com, and this week we are going over MLA Format and Citation. Remember when you wrote your book response, I gave you a very brief introduction to what citation looks at? Well, now we're going to go over something much more thorough, much more specific, and it's the MLA format. What is the MLA format? Well, it's one manner of citation, one standard of format that's used mostly in colleges. You'll be using this for almost all of your papers until you start getting into really deep into science or psychology, but pretty much for all the humanities, it's MLA format all the way. So, here's an example of what you're going to be going over this lesson. We're going to learn how to format the margins, the header, and the footer of your paper. Turns out we're not going to edit the footer at all. There's no footer in MLA format. You're going to learn about what size of font to use. There are some loose rules and some basic guidelines for this, and I'll tell you what those are in a minute. You will learn how to make in-text citation correctly, which is very important because we don't want to plagiarize, we don't want to steal somebody's work, and we'll learn how to make a bibliography, which I'll explain what that is in just a moment. Margins. Margins are the edges of the paper where you don't have any text printed. You'll find them on the left and the right and on the top and the bottom. And if you're setting up margins for your paper, you need to make sure that they are set like this. Top and bottom are going to be 1 inch. Bottom and right are going to be 1 inch. What's great is that this is a standard format that's already recognized and put in automatically on most copies of Word, so you don't have to worry about it. It makes it a lot easier on everybody, even your teachers. So, but if they don't, just remember this. Top margin, 1 inch. Bottom margin, 1 inch. Left and right margin, 1 inch. Not 1.5 inches, not 1 1/4. This is easy to remember because you just remember 1 inch everywhere. So, margins. Headers are a little bit more complicated. Headers fill actually the margin in the empty space above where your main text is. And at the top of the header, you're going to have something that will look like your last name, which will be, for me, Gonzaga. And then after that, in MLA format, it's just going to have the page number. So I'm going to put my tic-tac-toe symbol for number. It's very easy to remember, and you don't have to change this on each page because there's a way to do it automatically. First off, you have to actually access your header. And again, I reiterate, this will be different depending on which version of Windows you're using and if you're using a Mac or a PC. I'm using a copy of Windows that I have on Windows Vista right now, but here's the example. I just find the header right here, and there's several built-in formats, and I'm just using a specific one. And then if you notice, I have typed here in my header, I've typed my last name, my cursor is blinking right here, and I'm going to select page number, and I'm going to put insert page number. What this will do is automatically, on the header of each page I write, without me doing anything, it will have Gonzaga followed by the page number automatically, and it'll change with each page. So that's one less thing I have to do. Once I know how to set it up, it's all done for me. Now what's kind of confusing is that I can't type anything else until I actually exit the header with this particular version of the software. So I'm going to click close header and footer right up here, and then I'll finally be out and ready to go and continue writing the rest of my paper. So, fonts. This is very important, and we're going to go over this very quickly. Use a legible font. What does legible mean? It means readable, easily readable. And the examples that you should use are Times New Roman, Georgia, I personally feel looks a little bit better, and Arial. You must absolutely never use a font called Comic Sans. I'm going to take a quick detour here and explain to you why Comic Sans looks so bad. Comic Sans is so bad that there are entire websites written by comic authors and people who make fonts called bancomicsans.com because it is an ugly font that for some reason is really popular. Never use Comic Sans under any circumstances, even if you're text messaging your friends. If you want to know what a good comic font looks like, you can Google that, or you can go to a website called blambot.com and you will find a better looking comic font. But in an academic paper, make sure, especially, you don't use Comic Sans. Don't use fonts that are made to look like handwriting, especially if your handwriting looks like teachers. Don't use handwriting fonts. Cartoon title fonts. You might be able to get away with this if it's only in your title and your teacher is very generous and kind of happy and likes your papers. You might be able to get away with a cartoon title font or a fancy font in your title only. Or maybe you'll make a nice cover sheet for your research paper that you can use a fancy cartoon title font. Maybe you'll do that too. And then you have these expressive fancy fonts. And you know what? These will look pretty, they'll look great, and they'll look neat. Probably only should be used for titles, if anything at all, but for the most part, stick to rule number 3. Rule number 3 is this. Use a font that looks like a font in your textbook. If you use a font that looks like a font in your textbook or in a magazine or something else that you're reading, you win. And you will have a successful font. When in doubt, stick to Times New Roman or Georgia. It's not a hard and fast rule, but those are the best ones. Now that we've already discovered fonts, let's figure out how we're going to actually put our names on this paper. At the top of the first page, in the right, on the right-hand side, the left-hand side, teacher's a little dyslexic. On the left-hand side, you need to put the format like this. You need to put your name, space, Professor Snape, or Professor or Mr. whoever your teacher's name is, space, the title of your class, English 101, space, and then the date formatted like this, day, month, year. Americans, we're not too used to this, but if maybe you know somebody in the military background, they know this standard format. Day, month, year. Keep it that way on the titles and the fronts and the first page of all your papers. Make sure it looks this way. Now, once you've got the header and the footer formatted, we're going to go over what's called the bibliography next. The bibliography, as you might remember, is a completely separate page that attaches to the back of your paper, and it gives you a complete list of all the citations of all the books that you've read and all the magazines and all the websites and anything you've done to add to this research paper. It's also known as a works cited, which I think is a better term. Now, what's really, really cool is that a lot of modern versions of Windows and other papers will do this automatically for you. But if they don't do MLA format automatically, then we have to kind of know the rules. So remember, back of the page, and then you're really lucky, you'll be able to do this automatically. So let's see what bibliographies will look like. Here's an example. Notice, I have what's called a hanging indent, meaning that the first line is not indented, but everything else is indented of each paragraph. It's called a hanging indent. First line of the paragraph is not indented, everything else is indented. And this is so that if somebody wants to read over this really, really quickly, they'll be able to see, okay, so he's been citing this Belenoff Pat a lot. And then so I'm going to be able to go to the back of the paper and figure out what that book is and where it comes from. Remember, you cite properly when you make it easy for the reader of your paper to find your source. Well, if you look at this citation in the back of the bibliography, you'll know exactly where to go, and you'll even know the year it was published, and you'll even know where it's published. You'll have almost too much information, but that's good. You want to give your reader too much information when you're citing. Bibliographies, the actual bibliography citation will be different depending on which work you're citing. It'll be different for a book, for a magazine, for a website, for an academic article, and I'm going to give you just a few. To get all of these, you'll have to either Google MLA format or you'll have to refer to a latest MLA handbook. Honestly, you're going to be able to find this information online, so I don't encourage buying an MLA handbook, but it is still a handy thing to have around. For bibliographies, we format them this way, if they're books. Last name of the author, first name of the author, title of book, which is underlined or italicized, place of publication, colon, publisher, and year. What's a quick sample? Seagraff Stephen, The Patriots Dynasty, New York, Harper Press, 2009, print. I put that print there just because the MLA format likes to know, did you access this in print or did you access it in the web these days? Normally you can omit that, but you can go ahead and just put print there for future reference. All right, but what if the book has more than one author? A lot of books do. Well, there's another way that we can format it. I'm going to put the last name and first name, just like I did if the book's by one author, but then I'm going to add and first name, last name of the second author. After that, it's going to be just like the previous example. Title of book, place and publication, etc., etc. Here's an example of a two-author book citation. Andrews Deborah C. and William D. Andrews. Kind of weird that I'm putting first last name when I did last name first name for that citation, but it doesn't really matter. Business communication, underlined again. And then New York, Macmillan, 2006, print. Just so everybody knows that I accessed it in print. But it's a book. Most teachers are still going to assume that. All right, bibliography, books. So here's an example of an essay that's in a book. So remember, sometimes you'll have a book that's a collection of essays, kind of like we went over last time with the Brave New World examples where I found, oh, hey, look, there's an entire book that's just all about essays. So if I'm citing a specific essay in a book, I'm going to do last name, first name, but then I'm going to add an extra step. I'm going to put the name of the essay in quotation marks, then the title of the book, underlined or italicized. Then there's still another step. This right here, ed, stands for editor. Who is the editor of this book? Who took all of these essays and put them together? First name, last name, and then after that, it's just place of publication, publishing company, year. Oh, one more extra step, pages. The pages that I can find this essay on. Here we go. Here's a quick sample. Gould, Stephen J., has written an essay called Counters and Cable Cars. The Best American Essays, College Edition. Great. I got the title of that book underlined or italicized. Who edited the book? Edit, Robert Atwan. Boston, Houston Publishing, year, and then finally I got to make sure I put the page numbers. Notice I got 374 to 83. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean it goes to 374, wraps all the way around, and goes back to page 83? No, of course not. This is just an abbreviation. Page 374 to page 383. Now we're getting ready to journals and magazines, and we cite these similar to how we cite essays in a book. We have last name, first name of the article author, article name in these little quotation marks, and then the name of the magazine or journal, the date it was published, and the pages. No need for a publishing house, but we do need the date it was published. Here's an example. Tift, Susan. Our article is in our nice quotation marks. In time, which I'm underlining now, and that was published on the 14th of November, 2010, pages 58 to 64, and I'm putting print right here because, again, a lot of people want to know, did you get this in print or did you access this on the web? Okay, this is for a website. Websites are going to be cited similar to magazines. Last name and first name of the author, just like almost everything else we've done. Then I got an article name, or I could just put a website name right there if it's just a section of a website. but what's really important is the name of the website. Finally, we have to note, very important, that we note the date we access the website. Now, why do you think that might be? Well, websites, unlike books and magazines and other print media, tend to change a lot. So I want to know, did I access this at a particular date? That way, if the reader comes back and the information there looks different than what you put there and what you cited, they'll know, well, it's just changed since the data was accessed. Put web to indicate that this is a website. And finally, make sure you add the URL. The URL is just the website address. You can copy and paste that from your browser. That's the best way to do it. A lot of the times, though, with websites, we don't know the name of the author. So what we do is we just write down the name of the organization, and then the rest of it is just kind of cited just like the first and last name. Article title, name of website, date accessed, web URL. Here's an example of a website citation, and I don't know the author's name, but I do know the name of the organization. Catholic Charities USA. Great! What is the name of this article I'm getting off of the website? Climate Change and Poverty. Good. What is the name of the website? Catholic Charities USA, same as the organization. I'm writing the month that I access it, I'm writing the web, and then I'm writing the URL, which is the most important thing for web addresses, CatholicCharitiesUSA.com. Now that we've kind of gone over the bibliography, and I reiterate, that's not everything. You'll have to Google or find an MLA handbook to find specifics, or if you're lucky, your copy of Word will just do it automatically for you. But in-text citation is a little different, and let's go ahead and read some samples. I'll highlight my in-text citation so that you can see it too. One of the most important things to remember about fiction writing is to give your characters a background. Quote, failure to develop a background will frequently result in a caricature. Swain, 64. At the same time, it is important to remember not to overburden the reader with background. I bid, 65. Fiction author Dwight Swain says that we should check character background against 4 criteria: body, environment, experience, and IDs, 65. All right, so what have I done with this in-text citation? You notice I've cited it 3 different ways. First off, what I have here is I have the author's last name so that somebody can just flip back to the bibliography and figure out, oh, it's that book by this author whose last name is Swain. What do you suppose this number 64 is? It's a page number. So they know they can go right back to the book, open up the book on page 64, and they will find exactly this quote right here. Now, what about this word here? I bid, I-B-I-D. Is that an author's last name? No. It's a Latin abbreviation that I don't even know what it means, but it does mean the same as before. So I bid refers to Mr. Swain. And notice I got my page number right here. Okay, what about this final in-text citation? 65. Well, why did I just put the page number? Can you figure out why? Well, because I've already indicated the author. I've already said Dwight Swain, and I've only recognized one book by Dwight Swain, so all the reader has to do is look up Swain, go to my bibliography, and find page 65 on the book I'm referring to. So these are 3 examples of in-text citation. I can just refer to a page number if I refer to either the author or the work before I make that citation. So, what are some other issues that we can go over? Well, first off, we do have books by organizations. And if a book is by an organization, that's another form of citation, and I leave it to you to go ahead and look that up on the internet yourself, or rely on your copy of Word to get that solved for you. Another one is like, what if it's one work by more of the same author? So suppose I have one book by Dwight Swain, and I have another article by Dwight Swain, and then I have a third book by Dwight Swain, and I'm using all of these in my research paper. How do I cite that? Again, use an MLA handbook or refer to Google or refer to your word processor to do this automatically for you. How about old classic books that are translated into modern English? That's a little difficult. That's a little tricky. If I was reading something by Niccolo Machiavelli, who was writing during the Renaissance in Italian, how should I cite that? Should I cite it as Niccolo Machiavelli first published, in centuries ago? Normally not. Normally we reference those kind of books by the publisher and the translator. Again, you can find that in an MLA handbook or you can go online. Religious texts always have kind of specific ways that they like to be cited. If you're familiar with how to cite the Bible or how to cite the Quran, there are rules for that too. So, what I'd like you to do for your assignment is go through the sample MLA formatted essay. And then you'll actually be able to see in-text citation, you'll see how it works with the bibliography, you'll see the header and the footer, and that will get everything for you for what your essay should look like in the end. Please read through it. Then, it's time to write your own research paper. You've already got the sources, and hopefully you've already read through a few of them by now, so you're ready to go. Choose at least 2. You don't really need more than 2, but if you want to do 3 or 4, go ahead. Don't get too many sources. You don't need to be overburdened for this. But what is important is that you get to 800 to 1200 words, and you make sure you format this with MLA. If you have any questions, just go ahead and Google for the answers, or you can double check with the MLA handbook. But mostly, your word processor will do this all for you by itself. Thanks again for using educator.com.